Welcome to the What's New in RAD Controls for WinForms Q3 2013 webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on tv.telerik.com. The roadmap for the session today will include a quick introduction, then we'll jump right in and review some of the new controls and functionality being added to the RAD Controls for WinForms suite. I'll then demonstrate the new controls and finally wrap up with some handy resources and questions and answers. My name is Carrie Payette and I'm a developer evangelist for Telerik. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at Carrie Payette, on my personal blog at codingbandit.com, as well as on my Telerik blog that's located at blogs.telerik.com/carriepayette. So what is new in RAD Controls for WinForms? First off, RadGanttView has been officially released. RadGanttView provides an easy way to visualize and interact with your project timelines. So thank you to everyone who tried out this control while it was in its preview state. And based on the feedback that was received, the RadGanttView now supports seamless integration with RadScheduler, has improved printing support, and displays a today indicator. RadGanttView has robust data binding support and the ability to import existing Microsoft project data that has been saved as XML. Ratings are everywhere. People and companies would like to know how a particular product or service is being received by the public. A common way of obtaining this data is by providing a rating interface in your application. RadRating is a control that will allow you to implement or simply display ratings in your Windows Forms application. So out of the box, you can choose from stars, hearts, or diamond shapes. The control is also very flexible, allowing the display of precise ratings, so you can have ratings like 3.4 or 4.75 stars. You can also choose to allow only full ratings, so only entire numbers like 1, 2, 3, or 4, or even allow half ratings, so you can choose like a rating of 3 or even 3.5. And we've all been there. Sometimes we have so much data that we need to have displayed in a chart in our application. You previously had to decide whether you wanted to split the data up into manageable charts or bite the bullet and display one chart that's cluttered with tons and tons of data that's often difficult to interpret at first glance. RadRangeSelector has been introduced to solve this problem. What RadRangeSelector allows you to do is to select a portion of that large chart and have just that portion that's been selected be displayed in great detail in another chart. So this makes visualizing large data sets much more manageable. This Q we've also released the Office 2013 theme for your applications. Using this theme, you'll have the ability to continue to provide a look and feel that is in line with the ever-popular Office suite. So this provides, again, a familiar look and feel as well as a certain level of comfort to your users, especially in organizations that have already adopted Office 2013. Other important functionality highlights are that RadPDF Viewer now has thumbnail support. As you can see from the screenshot, you can get a preview of each page in a document, and this further improves the navigation experience of your users when they're browsing a PDF document. RadPivotGrid has also been enhanced with a localization provider, and the contents of the grid can now be exported to Excel. RadPivotGrid also has support for calculated fields like sums and averages, as well as calculated items where you can define complex formulas to obtain a value. RadGridView's printing support has also been enhanced, so this goes above and beyond the existing print functionality that you are experienced with RadGridView, but you'll also see now that RadGridView supports multi-page printing. So let's take a moment now and dive right into some demos. Let's now take a few minutes to dive into some of the demos available to us in our RAD Controls for WinForms demo application. So you can see that any new controls have the indicator of new next to them. So let's go ahead and dive into our GanttView example. You can see that we have a new demo available to us called Scheduler Integration, and this is the one that I want to show you today. So as I mentioned earlier, we now have the ability to seamlessly connect the RadGanttView with the RadScheduler. And what this means is that when you make changes in one, that they will automatically be reflected in the other. So here you can see I'm making changes in my scheduler, and you can see how it coordinates with the Gantt view down below, and it changes the appointment times in conjunction with the modification in the other control. And it goes both ways, so you can see that now that I'm editing it within the Gantt view, it's automatically being reflected in the scheduler. We can also apply our theme to it, so let's take a look at what this looks like in the new Office 2013 light theme. And you can see a change in the UI when I applied that theme. Alright, let's move ahead to our PDF viewer. And our PDF viewer, as I mentioned before, has been enhanced with our page thumbnails. And what this does is it makes life so much easier for your users that they're able to get a preview of each page in the document in this thumbnail viewer, so they could jump to the page that interests them the most. What's also nice is you have the ability to expand and collapse this page thumbnail section. So you click on this icon and it is now collapsed, and you can expand it as well. Let's take a look at what this looks like with our Office 2013 theme. And you can see that it's changed now with the theme, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. So let's now move along to our next control, which is the RadRangeSelector. And the RadRangeSelector comes with a few awesome samples, but for now let's take a look at the Microsoft Stocks example. And you can see here that there is a lot of data that's being digested at this moment. So in order to allow your users to be able to concentrate on the data that they want to see the most, we've implemented the RadRangeSelector, and that's this control down below. So you can see that we have a nice line chart available, but if I wanted to focus on a specific time frame, so let's take this area of time around 1997, I'm able to select that small range, and you can see that the other charts have now also changed, so I can focus on the data that is being selected within my range. So let's also take a look at this and see what it looks like with our Office 2013 light theme. And there you go. The next control I want to show you is the RadRating control. Here you can see the RadRating control and some movies that are associated with it. So you can see The Godfather here has stars, there's diamonds, hearts, and then a combination of both stars and hearts. If I expand out the options, you can see that the selection mode is half item, and the minimum value is 0 and the maximum value is 100. So you can see that when I hover over, the increments of each of the values is incremented on the range of 0 to 100, and using half ratings, so you can see that 70 is the half star and 80 is the full star. I can actually go ahead and change this to a rating of 0 to 5, and now you can see that the rating is 1, 0, 1.5, 2, 2.53, and so on and so forth. You also have the ability to set a precise rating, so this is where you give the users full control. So if you wanted to have a 0.4 selection, 1.5, 1.7, you can get that precise rating as well. So let's now choose the full item rating. So now it will only accept the full rating, so I can select 3, 2, and again for half item you will see that we have a 0.5 or a 1, a 1.5. You have the ability to do a standard direction or a reverse direction, so if for some reason you wanted to go the other way from right to left, you can do that. And you can also set the orientation to horizontal or vertical. And in the cases that you wanted to only display the rating, you could also set the controls to be read-only, so this would be like its display-only mode. Let's take a look at the basic source code required to interact between the RadGanttView and the RadScheduler controls. So in this demo, I've created a basic appointment application. So the first thing I needed was a business object that encapsulates the information relative to an appointment. So here you can see I have an appointment ID, an appointment start and end date, as well as a title and a description and a location. Next, I created an appointment provider class, and basically what this does is it exposes a binding list of appointments so that I can bind this data to my scheduler. So when the appointment provider is created in the constructor, I went ahead and I added a couple pieces of test data. On my form, all I did was I simply dragged a RadScheduler and I've docked it to the top, as well as RadGanttView, and I've docked that to the bottom. So the source code of my actual form, I've done a couple things. I've created two methods, one for preparing the RadScheduler and one for preparing the GanttView. So you can see here that I've created a scheduler binding data source, and with that I've also created a mapping, and what this mapping does is it allows me to map the properties in my business object to the mapping that my scheduler binding source expects. So you can see that I've set the start, end, summary, description, location, and unique ID properties to the actual string property names of my properties in my business object. Here you can see I've added the mapping itself to the event provider, and I've set the data source to the binding list of appointments that was created when I newed up my appointment provider. I've gone ahead and I've set that data source to the RadScheduler, and I told the RadScheduler that I wanted to display only one day of information. The next method I have is to prepare the RadGanttView. And you can see that to provide the integration between the RadGanttView and the scheduler is as simple as one line of code. So you can see that on the RadGanttView I've set the data provider to be a new GanttView integration provider, and I've passed in the RadScheduler. So this way the GanttView knows to obtain its data directly from the RadScheduler, and that's how that integration and interaction between the two controls takes place. I've also set the timeline range of my GanttView to be month, and I've started the timeline to be, the timeline start time to be today. And I've also set the 1 pixel time to be a time span of 10 minutes. Another important thing to make note of is that when you are implementing the RadGanttView, that it's very important that you instantiate the item child ID needed, and in this case with my integration with the RadScheduler, that event ID will be a new GUID. So here you can set the eChild ID equals new event ID, and I'm passing in a new GUID value. And that is basically how as simple as it is. Let's go ahead and run this application. Okay, so here you can see that I have my scheduler that has my 2 appointments of test data, and I also have my GanttView which shows again my 2 appointments. So I can go ahead and change the start time of my webinar in the test data, and you can see that it's automatically reflected in the GanttView. And the same goes vice versa. If I wanted to, I can also edit the data directly in my GanttView. Alright, so let's move along now into our next demo, which is going to be our RadRangeSelector. For this demo, we're going to take a look at a bunch of data plotted on a chart. So what we're going to be seeing now is essentially the seatbelt usage data for every state in the United States for 4 years. So you can imagine that this chart is going to be a very busy chart. So let's get started just by running the sample first, and then we'll walk through some of the code that goes into creating this demonstration. So here you can see that we have our form, and on our form we have our RadRangeSelector as well as our chart. So if I go ahead and I change this range to be something smaller, you can see that the data is broken out and displayed in more manageable chunks. Another thing to notice is the state abbreviations. So you can see that if I were to put the abbreviations for the chart down below on the RadRangeSelector, there would definitely not be enough space. So here we've abbreviated it to using just the first letter in the state abbreviation. And then of course on the breakout, where we do have the additional room, we have the additional space for the extra letter. So let's go ahead and stop this now and take a look at some of the source code that goes into this demo. Let's take a quick look at some of the data that backs this demonstration. So I have here a seatbelt use data.csv, so it's a comma delimited file with each state as well as the percent usage of seatbelts that were obtained for the state across multiple years. So here you can see Alabama 1 year had 82.9% seatbelt usage. Along with that I have an annual seatbelt usage class. So you can see that this class encapsulates the data from that comma delimited file. So it has a US state, a year, as well as use percentage. Next I have a data provider class. What this data provider class does essentially is parses out that comma delimited file and provides a binding list of data that is of type annual seatbelt usage. So when I new up the data provider, you can see that it populates the data binding list with the parsed data from the file. So this is basically just doing this parsing. There's not anything particularly interesting about that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our form. So on our form you can see that I have a rad chart view that I have docked to the top, and I have a RadRangeSelector that is docked to the bottom. Inside the code for this form you can see that we have a public static dictionary, which is a lookup of the states. So what this does essentially is parses the state's abbreviation, and this will map the full name of the state, which is also in our CSV file, to the actual abbreviation. So this way we're showing the abbreviations in our charts instead of the entire name. Inside our form I also have a few preparation methods, so you could see where I'm preparing the state's dictionary, which again is going to read that XML file and provide a dictionary lookup based on the full name to provide the abbreviation value. When I prepare the chart view, you can see that I'm newing up my data provider, and this will go ahead and populate that data property with the list of annual seatbelt usage for every state across multiple years. So on my chart itself, I've created a bar series for the usage of the seatbelt for each year from 2009 to 2012. So let's walk through the creation of one of these bar series. So here's for 2009, and you can see that I'm setting that data source for the bar series to be the data where the year is 2009, and I'm basically sending it over as a list. So that is the data source. I'm setting the value member to use percentage, the category member to US state, and then for the legend I'm just simply telling it the year that that data represents. And I've set the combine mode for my bar series to cluster. So that's why for each state you saw multiple bars representing each year. And I've repeated that same logic for 2010, 2011, and 2012. Then I've added the seatbelt usage bar series for the years of 2009 through 2012 to my rad chart view. I've told it to show the legend, And I've also rotated my label to be rotated at a 60-degree angle, and I'm using a state format provider, which I'll run in here and show you in a minute, which basically returns, it passes in the full string from the CSV, so in this case Alaska or Alabama, and it will access that dictionary that I've populated on my form and return its abbreviation. So let's now take a look at preparing the range selector, and we'll revisit this here in a moment, but what I really wanted to show you in this sample is the RadRangeSelector associated control, and this is where I tell that RadRangeSelector to use the data that is plotted in the rad chart view for its information. So this is how you associate both of those controls to work together. And here I've also added handlers for a couple size events, and let's walk through those right now. So when the form is sized differently, so if the total zoom factor is greater than 1.6, it's going to show that entire state abbreviation. If it's not, it's going to show the first letter in the abbreviation. And I've done the same thing here. So for the actual RadRangeSelector, I know that I'm going to be plotting that 50 states across that x-axis, so I always want it to display just that first letter in the abbreviation. So here's where you can see the logic for that happening. But as you can see here, you can definitely change the value based on the sizing that you have to work with. So if you wanted to have a different label based on a different zoom factor, you're more than welcome to modify this logic so that the chart always renders to your liking. The last code demo that I want to show you today is RadRating. So I've gone ahead and I've already created an empty rad controls for WinForms application. And as you can see, I have the RadControls 2013 Q3 available to me in my toolbox, and that's where you'll find the RadRating control. So let's go ahead and just drag and drop our control to our design surface. So what's nice about this control is you can resize it to any size that you would like, and you can also move it anywhere you'd like as well. So let's just go ahead and give this a run. And you can see that I have a visually stunning precise rating control from 0 to 100 by default. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the settings that we could play with the RadRating control. So we can actually go into the items collection, and if we wanted to, we could add a diamond element as well as a heart visual element to our collection, and click OK. And now when we run this application, you can see that we can quite easily use a variety of the shapes available, and you also can create custom shapes to have displayed in this RadRating control as well. So you can see here that now I have a series of 5 stars as well as a diamond and a heart. And I could also set the min and max value. So right now the minimum value is 0 and the maximum value is 100, but if I wanted to, I could also set a value in this case of 0 to 7. And I can also set the orientation to be either horizontal or vertical. So let me check the orientation here. Let's set it to a vertical orientation, and of course resize it as needed. And we could also set the selection mode here. So right now, as we saw when we ran it before, it was set to precise, And this is where you could set it to full item or half item. So in this case I want it to set it to half item. So now when we run it, we'll be able to see the horizontal representation of our rad rating with our additional shapes in our control. And there you have it with the precision of 0.5. The last thing that I want to do is quickly walk through the theme viewer so we could take a closer look at our Office 2013 Lite theme. So I've opened up Telerik Theme Viewer, and from the drop down I'm going to select our Office 2013 Lite theme. And here you can see how our UI has changed based on that theme. So let's take a look at some of the controls available, and you can see here's what our buttons would look like in our drop downs. You could also see the progress and waiting bars. You can also see the autocomplete box. Here's what our scheduler would look like, as well as our grid. Here's the list view, property grid, some charts, the pivot grid, as well as the Gantt view. So you can see that this is a very attractive theme that would be happily accepted by a lot of users that are currently using the Office 2013 suite of tools. So let's now switch back to our slides. Remember, you can find out more about RAD controls for Windows Forms at http://www.telerik.com/winforms, and you can access the documentation at http://www.telerik.com/help/winforms. As always, you feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me via email at carrie.payette@telerik.com, also via Twitter at carriepayette.